Let me say or make 2 points at the very beginning of this video before we get into really the meat of the video here. Number one, this is going to be, I don't know how many non-Georgia fans are going to be interested in this video. If you're not a Georgia fan and you don't care about some of the drama within the Georgia program and sort of some other stuff that's going on, you can click off now. To another group of people who are going to probably not even watch this video and just leave a comment saying, oh, well, Lou just takes up for Georgia because he's a Georgia fan. Lou never says anything bad about Georgia. Blah, blah, blah. I don't even know really what to say to those people. I don't see how you can be that dumb. There ain't been anybody on the internet over the last 8 or 9 years that's been harder on Georgia than me when I have felt like Georgia's deserved it. Whether it's bad play on the field, bad coaching, bad recruiting, bad personnel decisions in terms of who should start or who shouldn't. Times when players have screwed up off the field. I mean, I don't duck or run or hide from anything just because it's UGA related. That's a ridiculous take for somebody to have. And anybody that says that in the comment section here or anywhere else clearly has not been watching Uncle Lou every day like they're supposed to. I take UGA to task when I feel like they deserve it. And I've done that as far as the situation that's going on now. I've done it with all this driving and speeding and racing that's going on in Athens. I've done it for 2 or 3 months straight now. All right, so now we can get to the we can get to the video. Okay, so there are some issues at Georgia there are some driving related issues at Georgia, and they sort of fall into several different categories. You've got some people who have been caught with what I would describe as sort of just basic speeding tickets, 10, 15 miles an hour over the limit. Probably something that anybody watching this video could technically be charged with every day of the week that they've ever driven a car, okay? I sort of set that aside as one issue. Then you've got some players who have been caught, 30, 40, 50 miles an hour over the speed limit. That is clearly extremely dangerous. And separate, at least in my mind, to just a simple speeding ticket. I mean, I know these are college players, but just to sort of relate it to something maybe that we would go through on a daily basis. You're running a few minutes late to pick your kids up for school, or a few minutes late to a doctor's appointment, or a few minutes late to work in the morning, or whatever. And so on a 45 mile an hour road, you're going 58 miles an hour, 13, 14 miles an hour over the limit. That could happen to anybody at any time. Going 40, 50 miles an hour over the limit, that's a separate problem to me. And then there's the racing, which indirectly led to the deaths of 2 people. I mean, we can't just, it wasn't a Georgia player that was driving, and technically it wasn't even a Georgia player that was killed. It was an ex-Georgia player that was killed, right? I mean, a month, 2, 3 weeks, a week after the season ended. But it was a UGA staffer. It was a UGA recruiting staffer driving a UGA player or former UGA player around in a convoy of cars with other former and current Georgia players. And it appears from a lot of the reporting that went on around that incident that drinking was involved and racing was involved. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know the details of what happened, who was speeding, who wasn't, who was racing, I don't know any of that. All I know is what the police reports say and what the investigation found, and then subsequently what people were charged with. And that was just absolutely horrible. And while all of those incidents are sort of separate, they're connected because they just kind of all involve people, driving, speeding, excessive speed, racing. It's all sort of intermingled together. And I do think it's a problem that needs to be addressed at UGA. And look, for all I know, there are other universities, other teams that have had similar issues with players in speeding or reckless driving or racing or whatever. And for whatever reason, we don't know about it or it doesn't get reported. I mean, look, the truth of the matter is Georgia is a back-to-back defending national champions. And it's going to be hard for anything right now that happens at UGA, good or bad, not to be magnified, right? I mean, that's kind of what happens when you're on top of the world as a team or as an organization in whatever sport it is you're competing in, right? You get a ton of media attention. If there's a lot of good things going on, those good things are going to get exaggerated and covered ad nauseum, right? And that would work to your benefit in that case. If there are maybe some bad things going on, maybe some things, the legal issues, in Georgia's case, the issues with the driving, then those things are also going to get covered and magnified. And there's obviously, something going on. The pure number of cases involved here with speeding is concerning, I think. And again, I'm the last one to, I'm not going to sit here and point fingers and pretend that any of these people are career criminals or thugs or anything like that because they're speeding. I mean, at the end of the day, these are 18, 19, 20, 21, 22-year-olds who have money and access to fast cars. I was that age. I probably shouldn't have had a Dodge Charger when I was 19 or 20 years old, or a Challenger or Hellcat or whatever it is that they're driving. And I didn't have one of those. And it's probably a good thing that I didn't. I'm not absolving any of them of their guilt for whatever, whether it's speeding or racing or whatever. It's clearly, they got to find a way as a program, and this falls on Kirby. Got to find a way as a program to get this under control, however that happens. I don't know how Kirby is going to go about getting a group of 100 18 to 22-year-old males to consistently drive under the speed limit and stop racing. I have no idea. I also don't make $10 million a year, and I'm not responsible for those 100 players. Kirby Smart is, and he's got to figure out a way to get this under control because the story's not going to go away. Especially as incidents continue to occur, right? So now you've got the other side of the coin, which is the AJC part of this, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. Again, and if there's anybody still watching that it's not necessarily a Georgia fan or from Georgia or whatever, the AJC, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, is sort of the flagship newspaper in the state of Georgia and has been for over 100 years. It's based out of Atlanta, but it's a statewide paper. This thing gets delivered all over the place, even outside the state of Georgia. You can get the AJC delivered to you no matter where you live. Now, I know nobody gets papers delivered to them anymore, but so you get what I'm saying, though. You can read it online, whatever. But anyway, it's been around forever, and obviously they cover Georgia and everything that goes on at Georgia and Georgia Tech and just everything in Georgia. But part of that, of course, is UGA, the University of Georgia, the athletics department, and the football program. I don't know this. What's the guy's name? Judd or whatever this, the guy that wrote the article. I've never heard of this guy before. And I admittedly don't read the AJC, not because I previously have some issue with the AJC. I just don't, I quit reading newspapers. I have to be honest with you. I quit reading newspapers at some point right after college. So you're talking early 2000s, I quit reading newspapers. They were still being delivered back then. And I just, the internet was starting to come of age at that time. And a lot of the stuff you could find in the newspaper tomorrow morning, you could find online now, right? That's a big problem with a newspaper today, is that it's printed at 5 in the morning, right? And it tells you what happened yesterday. Well, in the age of the internet, you can find out what's happening now, right now, but in a lot of different places on the internet. So that's why I quit reading the AJC, because I just quit reading newspapers altogether. So I don't know this guy. I don't know if he's got a problem with Kirby Smart or a problem with Georgia UGA in general, a problem with somebody in the athletic department. I don't know. Or for all I know, he's just a journalist who in his mind is doing his job. He may not have anything at all against Georgia or anybody there. I don't know. But this was a sloppy piece of reporting on his part, and it winds up that it might cost him. The problem with the article that he wrote is it's sort of an old trick. You take kernels of truth or pieces of truth, but you leave out other pieces of truth. The article comes across as trying to push a narrative. I know, believe me, I know. Nobody watches the news anymore. I get it. You don't even have to type it in the comments section. I know you claim you don't watch the news anymore. But I'm going to relate this. It's kind of like watching Fox News if you're on the right, or CNN if you're on the left, or MSNBC or whatever they are, right? Fox News will come on and they'll tell a story. But they clearly have an agenda behind that story. So they tell the story in such a way as to paint that story in the light that favors their agenda. And CNN and MSNBC, all the news people do this. It just depends what, in this case, in the case of the news, it's a political thing. So if they're left-leaning, they will tell kernels of truth. They will tell pieces of truth in the story. But maybe they'll leave out some other stuff. Or maybe they'll exaggerate some of the truths or make them bigger than they are that favor their position. And again, both sides do this. And this newspaper article that was written by this guy in the AJC comes across that way. And I don't know the guy, so I don't know if he's got an agenda against UGA, but the article comes across that way. He left a ton of information out of that article. The day after that article was published, On 3, I believe it was, put out a similar article, but they actually published the police report, the text messages back and forth between Jamal Jarrett and the female in this case. And it was clear as day to anybody who read that police report and read those text messages that Jamal Jarrett did not commit a crime here. In fact, you could make an argument the opposite is true, and he was the victim of a crime. Now, I don't want to get into the age of consent laws. I have a problem with it in multiple ways. A lot of you probably do too. Age of consent in Georgia is 16, so, but Jamal Jarrett, this recruit, was 16 at the time. The girl involved was 20. I have a problem with that. It may be legal. I don't think that makes it right. And ask yourself this, if instead of being a football recruit, if this was a softball recruit, a 16-year-old female who was on a recruiting visit at UGA or any other college campus, and it came out that 16-year-old had sexual relations with a 20-year-old male, would we feel differently? Would we talk differently about that 16-year-old softball player than we talk about 16-year-old Jamal Jarrett in this case? And again, I'm not saying what the girl did was criminal, because in Georgia, 16 is the age of consent. But I feel like, I don't know. I've got a daughter that's 16. I've got a son that'll be 16 in January, or be 15 in January. If a 20-year-old gets a hold of my 16-year-old daughter, or a 20-year-old gets a hold of my 15-year-old son, doesn't matter to me whether it's against the law or not. They might not be in jail, but I will. I'll just leave it at that with that. So a lot of Georgia fans now are mad at the AJC, okay? They feel like the AJC is coming after Georgia. They feel like this article was slanted in such a way as to paint UGA in the worst possible light. And I tend to agree with the Georgia fans that feel that way, especially if you read that article that came out the next day from On 3, if you had read that AJC article and then read the article from On 3, there's no other conclusion you can come to other than how could they leave all this out? How could the AJC leave all that? The AJC had all that information, I'm assuming, and they just chose not to disclose it. It makes it look bad for the AJC. And so, Georgia fans get their pitchforks out. We're in the age today. Again, I really try to avoid politics on this channel, and I don't want to get political here. I'm just using this as an analogy, but we want to boycott everything today, in today's time. We all want to live in some sort of bubble where we only hear things we agree with, we only read things we agree with, we only want to be surrounded by people that hold our same views, and you see this all the time. Some company does something that we don't like, well, I'm never going to that company again, whether you're talking about Bud Light or Target or Disney or ESPN. Now, a lot of the people that say, well, I'm never doing this, I'm never doing that again, they're just lying. It's just internet rage. Well, so you got a lot of people doing that now with the AJC, okay? And I'm going to use Disney as an example here because it's the closest thing I can think of that I think everybody can understand. A lot of people hate Disney right now, or are mad at Disney right now. I'm never going to Disney again, never watching Disney again, never watching ES, I'm never doing this, I'm never doing that, right? Disney's dead to me. Okay. Well, Disney owns, the amount of things that Disney owns is mind-boggling. I mean, they own all the Star Wars, so if you're really boycotting Disney, then you can't watch any Star Wars movies. You can't watch ESPN. Which, if you're an SEC fan, if you're a fan of a football team in the SEC, starting next year, every single SEC game is going to be on a Disney-owned TV station. This is the last year we're on CBS. Next year, every SEC game is either going to be on ESPN, SEC Network, or ABC. Those are all owned by Disney. AJC owns the AJC, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, the newspaper, owns a subsidiary, DawgNation Daily. I like DawgNation Daily. I think DawgNation Daily is probably the best daily Georgia show or podcast or whatever you want to call it on the internet. Now, I guess as far as I know, it's the only daily Georgia show or podcast on the internet too, but nevertheless, it's a good show. Brandon Adams is a great radio guy or whatever. He's good at what he does. It's only for Georgia fans. It's 100% Georgia focused, and everything tilts Georgia's way on that show. But look, a lot of people like that, and he does a good job of doing it. And I guess, I think some people have known this, but a lot of people are just now finding out. The AJC owns DawgNation Daily. DawgNation Daily is a subsidiary of the AJC. So basically, this DawgNation Daily show that comes on at 9 or 10 in the morning, whatever time it is owned by the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. And a lot of people are just finding this out. And so they're upset about it. And the host of the show, Brandon Adams, who seems like a really nice guy, he hasn't said anything about it, and he can't. What's he going to? Again, it's his bosses. So then Georgia comes out, I guess yesterday now, and sends basically a cease and desist letter. I'm not a lawyer; I don't know the exact legal terms, but sends a letter to the AJC demanding an apology and a retraction on the article that they wrote a couple of weeks ago because of all the inaccuracies that were in there, the information that was left out, all that, demanding a full retraction. And so everybody that, over the last couple of weeks has been all up in arms about the AJC and subsequently DawgNation Daily. Of course, they flock to the DawgNation Daily show and their Twitter pages and all that, and they want to know, what is Brandon Adams, the guy that runs DawgNation Daily, what's he going to say about this letter, right? Well, he didn't say anything. He can't say anything. He works for the AJC. We have gotten to a point in society, or at least in the United States, where we just don't want to have anything to do with corporate media anymore. And unfortunately, that's what the DawgNation Daily is. They're owned by the AJC, and I could rattle off a whole list of people who are owned by, whose shows are owned by corporations. And look, when there's somebody else signing your paycheck, you have to do what they tell you to do, and you can't do what they tell you not to do, whatever that is. And in this line of work, that extends to what you can and cannot say. These YouTubers who work for these big corporations, they can't come on YouTube or Twitter or anywhere else on the internet and really say what they think, really say what's on their mind. They can't. Everything they do and say publicly through the internet, whether that's YouTube or Twitter, whatever it is, everything has to be funneled through the corporate filter that owns them. And in the case of DawgNation Daily, that's the Atlanta Journal-Constitution. I feel bad for the people at DawgNation Daily. I think they'll get through this, I'm sure. I don't think, like I said, some of these boycotts last longer than others. Some are total 100% fake from the get-go. Some are kind of half-assed attempts. I kind of correlate this AJC DawgNation thing to the Disney ESPN thing. A lot of people are saying they're done with the AJC. They're never supporting anything related to the AJC again. I don't think they really mean it. I think they're going to keep watching DawgNation Daily. I'm pretty sure the people running around saying they're never giving Disney another dime, at least in the circle that I run in, which is mainly college football fans. Yes, you are. You're going to continue to watch ESPN and ABC. You just are. Tell me you aren't. I'm going to listen to the game on the radio. Woo. No, you're not. I promise you're not. When Georgia plays on the road at Tennessee, if that game's on ESPN, you're going to watch it. Next year, when Georgia plays on the road at Texas and that game's on ABC or wherever it's at, you're going to watch it. When we play on the road at Alabama next year, you're going to watch it. You're not going to suddenly stop watching college football because the game you want to see is on a TV station owned by Disney. You're not. And I don't think very many people are going to cut off DawgNation Daily just because they're owned by the AJC. But I do think people need to understand they are owned by the AJC. And so expecting Brandon Adams to come out and be up in arms like the rest of us are about this terrible article that was written by the AJC trashing Georgia with inaccuracies, misinformation, and leaving misinformation out, and then Georgia sending a letter demanding a retraction and an apology, he's not going to say a word about it because he can't. He can't. All he can say about it is what the AJC tells him to say, because at the end of the day, he's an AJC employee. And again, that's not knocking him, but it is what it is. When you work for a big corporation, everything you do and say has to be run through that corporation's filter. This is probably one of the reasons Josh Pate thinks every team in the country is good every year. Every coach is good every year. Every player is good every year. Everything is always, the glass is constantly half full for every coach, team, and player in the country. Because he's owned by CBS and 24 Sports, he can't really say what he wants to say. And look, and all these people say the same thing. They say, no, they don't censor what I say. They don't do anything. They let me say whatever I want. No, they don't. They don't. The news people say the same thing. The guy will come on CNN and say, CNN's not, it doesn't tell me. No, yes, they do. Yeah, or you wouldn't be there. I mean, that's why you're there. Same thing, Fox News, MSNBC. No, you can't just come on there and say whatever you want. You got to toe the company line. You got to toe the company line. And as a society, we're getting a lot less tolerant of that. But I think we're still a long way away from actually meaning it in a meaningful way. Disney's not going away tomorrow because people are posting how much they hate Disney on the internet. They're still going to watch SEC football on ESPN. They're still going to see the next Star Wars movie when it comes out. They're going to still watch all the Marvel movies, which are owned by Disney. Now, they're still going to do all that. And people aren't going to give DawgNation Daily one of these and never tune into another Brandon Adams show or unfollow him on Twitter because, he's in cahoots with the AJC. All right, there you go. That's my thoughts on it. Have a great day.